Howdy once again, it's tubalcain, and I'm continuing with the rebuild restoration of the LISLE drill grinder. Be sure and watch all of the other episodes. There'll be many episodes in this entire series. So I finished the guard and in fact also the cover, and I did a color test and I rather like it. So I did the end piece, cleaned that up and sanded it. Now I'm using this Rust-Oleum hammer tone, but it's not giving me the hammer tone finish that is advertised here, so I've been cheated again. You see what I mean? It's a nice green color, but it's not hammer tone anymore than Man in the Moon. And now, I already cleaned this up just a little bit with a wire brush. I don't like it. I'm going to polish it a little bit more, probably by putting it on here and emery clothing it. You can tell by the holes and the deformation here over the years that this thing has had a lot of use. Also, this, well, I'll talk about that in a second. I may make a new one of these, but at the very least, if not less, I would like to, and it came with this, although I don't think that's original equipment, but that is how we go about tightening or loosening this. But I think I might drill some holes in here so I can use a face spanner. I like that better. Remember, this is left-hand thread. Alright, I'll take the guard off so that I can work on this thing. Now, I already took off this assembly, and that is held on by this nut, also with a series of holes in it for a spanner wrench, but those are kind of buggered up also, so really what that tells you is somebody was using a punch on it. And now I am realizing that these slots here, and I thought maybe they had something to do with the previous guard, but I don't believe they do, because that was the access, I think, to this nut to loosen it, either with the spanner, although this one doesn't fit in there, and I don't know that it ever came with a spanner, or a punch to move that back and forth. However, if there was a guard, those would not be accessible, or at least this one would not, and it would be most inconvenient to have to unbolt this from the stand and get underneath here in order to loosen that up. So I don't particularly like that provision. This I will polish up just by turning the motor on. This I don't think you were able to see before, but that was my alternate method of fastening this on for the third nut, so that's going to work just fine. I've told you repeatedly that this thing needs new bearings. Probably not an easy job, simply because I'm not sure how this is fastened on to the motor shaft, but that would have to come off in order for these end bells to come off. Similarly, on the end with the cooling fan, I know earlier I might have called this internally cooled, but it's externally cooled because that guard goes over here and forces the air around the motor. That's the cooling system. Also, you can see that there's an awful lot of grit. Apparently nobody ever had that off to clean it up. And this might be difficult to get off, also to remove that end bell. That's why at least at this time I do not intend to change the bearings. I got enough work to do. I always like the Baldor motors with this assembly for a switch, and I have that on other motors as well. It's just like they really gave that some thought. This is similarly built, isn't it? Where most motor builders just have some kind of aftermarket baloney on there, but this is a beauty, and it's a 3450 RPM motor. I intend to paint and rebuild and clean up these pieces separately. Well, naturally, can't do it. I'm a champion of the obvious. I guess what I mean is I'll get back to them, and this is what I'm going to start on. So I'll take the motor off of the base, and you know, I've seen some of these motors on eBay for sale. Simply, apparently somebody threw everything away. They threw all this stuff away, put a wheel on it, or kept the wheel on it, and we're simply using it as a grinder. And that kind of saddens me, but I guess that's the way things go. So there are just 4 screws here, 4 bolts, 7/16 to take the motor off. So I will do as so. This is probably the first time the motor has been off the base since it was built. This is cast iron, not aluminum. So I'm not going to show this because who would want to see that, but I'm going to take this out in the garage and clean it up real well with a wire brush and probably sand this off. Then proceed to prime it, clean it, prime it, and paint it with the hammer tone, non-hammer tone paint. If you look at some of the other ones on eBay or images of the LISLE grinder, you'll see that not all the bases were the same. The method of fastening this onto a table or a pedestal differs, and there is the original color, and it appears to be more or less a hammer tone. Really a very nice casting. Similarly, I will clean up the motor, mask off the tag, and maybe even loosen up the capacitor cover. There's a lot of cleanup to do that on these, and I'm not going to show that, of course, so I'll get back to you in a while. Another thing that I'm going to do while I have this off, I told you that I was going to drill and tap a hole right about here perpendicular to this, and that is where that little spark guard will eventually go if the next owner decides to put it on there. Hey, there's a little slot on there. That'd be a perfect one. There's a nice spark guard right there. Okay, see you in a little bit. And then tap 1/4 20. I'm backing up here a little bit because I forgot something, and of course I just drilled that hole where the probe is, but I didn't do anything in regards to the shield yet, the face shield. So using some of this plastic glazing that I had in stock, and I think that's probably about the right width right now, I'm going to fabricate a little bracket similar if not identical to that, because there'll be a couple holes that need to be drilled here, and that's going to be baguesse and bagasse. So I'll bend something up, see what it looks like, lay it in place, but I'd rather do that before I paint it to avoid scratching my Rembrandt paint job. It looks like this so far. I have to cut it off, of course. Now I made up a shield here. It may not be the wrong size, but right size. I think this needs to be tilted down, but it's really going to be difficult to determine that until I start using it. But it's just a little bit of, yeah, that might help. This is band iron, semi-soft. This is a bugger to saw, you know, or sand. I don't know what it is. It's what they use at the for screen doors. By the way, I don't know if I said this before, but I'm going to tell you again, and it bears repeating, even if I did say it in an earlier video. I went to the blood bank a week ago, and they actually had the nerve to ask me to state my gender. They said, are you a man? Are you male, female, or other? Well, I kind of went off on the guy. I was a male nurse, but it's not his fault that he has to ask insane questions. But I almost walked out, and I may walk out next time or refuse to answer that because it's so insane. It goes so much against my grain. Would that bother you people out there? That's off topic. Okay, the plastic instantly broke when I attempted to drill it, and I remember now hating this kind of plastic, and these are drop-offs from the store, but it's just so brittle. It's just a horrible material. Well, enough of that rant, but oh, let me get back to the other rant. I wonder if people agree with me on that, but you know, some people comment only on my rants. They don't comment on the work or what I'm doing or the project. That disappoints me, so I shouldn't get off track. But I think that, you know, getting back to the morphodite stuff, that it's wrong. It's all wrong, and that some people here have to take a stand because this happens so slow and insidiously to young people that they don't realize it. They grow up that way and they think that's perfectly normal behavior and normal question. All right, here's what I do have. And I have quite a bit of this in stock. This is real plastic. This is polycarbonate. You might call it ABS, I think is the other name. I have it in clear. Mostly I have it in smoke colored. It came from the steel mill when they went out of business. But that's 1/4 inch thick. I really don't want it that thick. The other thing about plastic, especially that other stuff that broke, each and every little spark becomes embedded in it because it is a thermoplastic, and that's not good. Alright, let me cut this out. Lest you think I'm a champion of the obvious, marking this clear, the reason I did that is because I have much of this that is smoke gray, and it's hard to tell even that it's smoke gray, but it is. But mainly that's what I have, and I wish I had all clear. Alright, now this stuff actually is workable. That is, you can drill it, and it's rhino tough, you know. Boy, my grandson loves anything to do with rhinos. Now, on final assembly, of course, I will put a washer under there and remove the masking and all of that. But that does that for now. I think that looks pretty good. Again, it may have to be tilted. I don't know if it'll interfere with the appliances that go in here. But I'm going to take the plastic off, and I think I'll leave the bracket on there and paint it along with the guard, so it's all the same color and I don't have to deal with other small pieces. Now I truly am off to the paint shop, at least with the base today and the guard, you know, because this is easy and I've already put in a couple hours, so this will be tedious. Not hard, but tedious. See you later. I'm well into the rebuild here and the painting and everything, and it's starting to look good, but I'm slowed down here a great deal by these more intricate parts, and then I'm running into a little problem in that there's wear. For instance, I'd like to replace this shaft. There's a lot of wear on it, but it's not, I thought it was 5/8, but it's like 609 thousandths, so it's whatever that 64 size is. Why they would do something like that, I don't know, but even cleaning these up is a bit of a chore, but it's a little bit of fun. But there, you know, there's wear in here, and years ago this was so worn out right here where the other piece rides that someone had brazed that to build it up, but even that has worn down into almost a little bit of a lip right there. Nothing I can really do about that except work around it. So I'm getting these parts cleaned up good enough to paint, and that's what it looks like just before painting. So I have a little masking to do on this and brightening, and degreasing, and then this piece is done. And I'll turn down this piece. A lot of other pieces here that I've cleaned up. It's very time consuming and laborious. I guess that's why I tend to stay away from rebuilds and painting. It's several days later. The painting is finished, ready to take the masking off. Looking pretty good. I like that paint. Although I didn't get a whole lot of the hammer tone effect unless I put it on real heavy. I guess it's just fish eyeing is all it is. Okay, I'm removing the masking on some of these parts, and that sure was sticky masking tape. I think it was out of date. I did clean up the parts, but I mean, there's still corrosion and rust. I didn't want to spend too much time, or I just don't think it's necessary because it's still going to look like an old grinder. Got to get that tape off. Now on this part, I made a new knob. I had that in stock, a little bit rusty, but put a new screw, and that of course goes on like. Now you know what I do, perhaps some of you do this too, is to take pictures as I go along so I can remember how to put it back together. I mean, it's been 3 or 4 days, but I can forget pretty quickly. Plus I got this and all the parts list to help me. It would have been nice to have some new parts here with a new decal on there that would be easier to read, although it's still usable. And you may think I didn't clean this piece up, but I did. But that's about as good as it's going to get. Then I look back into my picture to see where the original setting was, which I think was in the middle. I'll refer to the instructions for that as well. I should put a drop of oil on that, but the oil will then attract and collect the grit from the wheel, especially when you dress the wheel. Alright, that piece is done. Looks pretty good. I like that paint. Now as I put this piece together, I think I already mentioned I made a new piece here. That's 7/16 stock, because this one is so badly worn in spots, as well as this one, which goes in here. Tremendous wear in various spots here. It's a piece of, I had to turn this down. I had to start with 5/8 stock, and of all sizes it's 39/64, which is about 609. But you know, looking at this, getting, you know, around 609 there, but in some spots way undersized. So I had to turn this down and then put two little dimples in there for these set screws. So that took a little time to do. But then again, everything here that I'm doing takes a lot of time. All right. I believe that I have these two assemblies pretty well finished, modified. There were a lot of adjustments. I had to change many fasteners that were worn out or just corroded. I'm sure there's more adjustments that will need to be made as I assemble it. I put new knobs, one right here. I just have them in stock. That's a fine thread. And I had to make this one up for the length of the drill bit. Looking good. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the motor and the base. The base looks very good, no wear on it, as there wouldn't be. There's some minor sand that fell in, but that's acceptable. You're going to see that in castings. Also note that there's a little ledge here, or against which the motor rides and can be aligned, and that makes sure that it's perfectly parallel. The shaft is perfectly parallel, or should I say perpendicular, to this slot. And the motor will be set on like that. And some brand new screws, grade 5. When I took this apart, I put a little index mark right there and there. So I'm ready to put this assembly on. Like that. The washer first and then the nut. And I just have to use a pin punch to tighten it. There's no good way. I don't really like that. But if it's been that way for 50 years, it must be good enough. And I believe, now that I'm looking down this slot, that is the method for tightening. It just seems kind of funny to me. Then taking a punch, I can tighten it. Actually, that did work pretty well. There's a pretty good feel to this since I replaced those several shafts, so that works real nice. The color now, and I do like that color. In review, if you didn't see the other videos, is Rust-Oleum hammered, well, what do they call it? Verd green. Similar to the original, a little bit lighter color here, but I like that also. Hammer tone. Alright, now I'm ready to put the guard on, and I won't take any time to show you that, since you've seen me do that on and off many times in the previous chapters or episodes. So let me put that on off camera. Well, now it's wheel time, so here goes the Norton 5-inch wheel. Brand new, supposedly. Earlier in the series, I told you I did not like these buggered up holes here for the spanner wrench. And I don't even like the fit of the spanner wrench. That's not proper. So I decided to drill a couple holes, as I said I was going to. 3/16 holes that'll fit my face spanner. Adjustable face spanner. Remember, it's a left-hand thread. See, I'm just holding onto the wheel. The thing about the left-hand thread, of course, it's self-tightening. There's no tendency for it to loosen at all, and that's on the left-hand side of a motor. There are always left-hand threads. And last but not least, the wheel cover. Now, only one improvement I would make, but I probably wouldn't go back and do it, but it would look so much better around the bolt holes to have a boss. But that would have required precision location and then possibly even a sample cast up and then redoing it. So it just wasn't worth the trouble for me, but I think it would have looked better. So I'll put that on. And the job is almost done. I'm wrapping it up here, not a whole lot more to do. I just made this spark guard, and that will fasten into this hole that I drilled and tapped earlier. And of course, you know, the purpose of that is just to keep the spark from traveling clear around and then exiting right here where you're working. So that has a slot in it so that it can be adjusted down. Right now, there's not a whole lot of clearance between the guard and the wheel. And you'll see this on all grinders, but mostly people remove them. Not quite touching. How's that? And last, but certainly not least, is the face guard. You saw me make this a little bit earlier. It's a little bit awkward, but we need a washer and a nut. Well, that pretty much wraps up this project. Thank you for watching. And it's been 5 parts. Go back and watch the other ones if you haven't seen them. Come a long way since go back and look at what it looked like, you know, a couple of weeks ago when I first got it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Now continue to watch my videos, and in future videos I'm going to demonstrate the use of this. I'm going to talk about drill geometry. I'm going to grind some drills, sharpen some drills, so you see how this thing is used. But hope you enjoyed this lengthy 5-part video. This is tubalcain saying so long for now.